The film being discussed is Rashomon. My extract begins at 1 hour 23 minutes, 0 seconds, and ends at 1 hour 28 minutes and 0 seconds. In the opening shot, we see the woodcutter confronting the commoner who stole the kimono and amulet from the baby. And it ends with the woodsman leaving the shelter with the baby in his arms. I was interested with the way this scene progresses and how it ends the film on a happier note. It relates back to the theme of the loss of faith in humanity. Akira Kurosawa, whose picture is shown on the left, was both the director and the writer of this film. The producers are Minoru Jingo and Masashi Nagata. The main characters included Tajumaru, who is the pictured middle, Masako Kanazawa, who is the wife, bottom right picture, Takahiro Kanazawa, the husband, who is in the top right picture, the woodcutter, who is in the foreground of this shot, and the priest, whose picture is in the background of the shot, and the commoner, who is facing the camera in this picture. This scene touches upon the common theme of loss of faith in humanity. This loss of humanity is presented by the commoner stealing the baby's items, and appears in the priest and woodcutter, but not in the commoner, because he knows that thieving is just in human nature. There's a bit of information revealed about the woodcutter in the scene. For example, it is inferred by the commoner that the woodcutter stole the expensive pearl inlaid dagger after the death of the husband and would have sold it for his own benefit. The commoner then goes on to tell the woodcutter that a bandit calling another a bandit is selfish. However, later, the woodcutter decides to take the infant and to raise it as if it were his own child. This leads to different emotions showing in the characters than what the audience has seen. The priest, who is in the foreground on the very right of this picture, believes that that the woodcutter is just trying to steal the baby, or steal from the baby, I should say. The woodcutter says that he was not, and he already has 6 children, so one more will not make a big difference in his life. And the woodcutter then says something that struck me as a bit unusual, yet it does tie to a main theme of the film, the theme being multiplicity. He says that it is inevitable to be suspicious of others on a day like this. This makes sense, as the telling of multiple accounts of one event will cause both confusion and create suspicion over what really happened in this event. He then says that the priest says that he was ashamed for assuming the woodcutter was just trying to steal from the baby, but then the woodcutter says that he's the one that should be ashamed, and that he doesn't even understand his own soul. An interesting note about the tone and delivery of this whole conversation, however, is that both the woodcutter and the priest are sad, and they have gloomy facial expressions, and it sounds like, from their voice, it sounds like they're on the verge of tears, like I said, by the emotion in their voice. This is easy to see on the picture that is shown on the screen. You can clearly see that the woodcutter he's wearing a frown, and he looks like he's about to cry. It is also revealed that the priest is grateful of what the woodcutter has decided to do, most likely because the woodcutter has restored some of the priest's faith in humanity by offering to take this child whom no one else wanted, and instead of robbing it like the commoner did. Director Akira Kurosawa said that the script portrays such human beings, the kind who cannot survive without lies, to make them feel like they are better people than what they really are. And I believe this would explain why the woodcutter stayed silent when accused of stealing the dagger. He did not want to admit to anything that he had lied about earlier. So mise-en-scène elements play a huge role in portraying specific points and meanings throughout the whole film, but I believe there are a few good ones shown in this extract. To start with, it is very easy to tell the class of the 3 characters shown in the extract just based off their clothing. Looking at the clothes, they're all torn and tattered. You can see on the priest, over here is some tears, especially on the commoner, his entire shirt looks ripped, and on the woodcutter, again, shirt's ripped, has tears in it, and such. It is obvious to infer that these characters are lower class, or they're poorer, or most likely both. Another thing to be noticed here in the shot of these three characters, and this goes for most of the other shots that include the three characters in this extract, is that the woodcutter and commoner are both on the PowerPoints, and the priest is just in the middle of the frame. There is also very little room in the shot. It's pretty tight on these characters. The acting in the shot would also lead to the suspicion about whether the woodcutter took the dagger or not. When the commoner brings it up, the woodcutter looks at the ground, and when I say brings it up, I mean when the commoner brings up the dagger and asks the woodcutter what happened to the dagger that was mentioned. The woodcutter, like I said, looks at the ground, looks down at his feet, and hunches over a tiny bit, visibly slouches, and starts to back up from the commoner, who is able to push him against the wall and hit him. This change in posture and body language clues the audience into thinking that the woodcutter might be ashamed of something, for example, stealing the dagger and selling it for his own benefit. Speaking of the framing in the shots, there is a sequence after the commoner leaves the shelter they were in, shelter themselves from the rain, where the camera appears to be getting closer to the two characters, the priest and the woodcutter. Dissolve effects are used to transition between these two shots. And we can see it gets closer from an extreme wide shot, as shown here, and closer to a low angle wide shot that is a little smaller than the extreme wide shot of the last slide. And finally, a wide two shot that shows the characters each on a PowerPoint. The woodcutter is on the left, the priest is on the right of the frame, and they just stand there motionless. And they stand there for what seems like forever, but is really only about 5-6 seconds, before this quietness is interrupted by the babies crying. And, speaking of sound, the only sound throughout these few shots is just the soothing sound of rain pouring down. Nothing else is heard except this until the baby starts crying, and then this leads into the sequence of the priest attempting to comfort and calm the baby, the woodcutter chasing after him and causing the priest to think that he is just trying to steal whatever this baby has left. The present day shots in the film always show us that it is raining, whether by visually showing us the rain, or by the sound of the rain that we hear. And however, it seems to change at the very end when the woodcutter is walking off with the baby and the camera is motivated by his movement by tracking backwards as he walks. It appears that it has stopped raining for this portion only. For the rest of the film, it appears that it rained, but for this shot only, it appears as though it stopped raining and the sun has come out. This could be symbolizing a new hope and a new start for both the woodcutter and the infant. And if you look, we also watch the woodcutter walk out of the frame, which symbolizes him walking out of this whole situation that he just endured with the murder and the mystery of what actually happened and who did what. So this film met the generic expectations as a mystery and a drama. The entire film is a mystery about what events actually took place in that forest during that day, and has all the emotions and suspenseful moments to satisfy the needs for a drama. Also, the music played helps to create the suspenseful and drama-filled moments that we see throughout the film. As mentioned, the main recurring themes in this film are that of a loss of faith in humanity and multiplicity. And the multiplicity theme is a really important theme because it has helped play into what is called the Rashomon effect, which is the telling of multiple stories about one event, and they never match up. It has also helped inspire multiple movies and TV shows about the same idea. This concludes my oral.